the end of week 12. Now, this is probably going to be the most important week of the whole 17 weeks. Last week, weight went up to 102 kilos. I'd obviously come down quite a lot the week before. I think I was around 100.7. Now, that was an anomaly jump. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes out of nowhere, your weight will drop for no reason. Sometimes it happens on the way up too, but sometimes when you're in a fat loss phase, your weight will just take a tumble. Sometimes it's unexplained. I put it down to the fact that I had taken 2 weeks off of training legs, maybe wasn't burning as much energy because I wasn't training as hard, adjusted my cardio a little bit. So maybe that's why my weight jumped up. But this week is very significant because I've come back down to a stabilized weight. Now, before I got into this fat loss phase, you have to remember I took 3 years off. And prior to taking 3 years off, I had been training consistently for 12 years. The reason why this week is so significant is because everything that my body has been conditioned to do over the last 15 years is the reason why I have to make the adjustments that I'm about to make. Now, at the start of this, the objective was to keep food as high as possible, keep cardio as low as possible. And for the best part, that worked very well. Food was still high, cardio was pretty low, 3-4 times a week, was eating around 4,000 calories a day. Not that we care, the most important thing is that we stay full and we feel good. But we've got to a point now where my body is saying no more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I look like at the start and what I look like now. So here's the comparison and we'll talk through it. You can see in the left-hand video, I look a bit fluffy. Some of you will say not out of shape. You can see that my legs look a bit flat. I just look very blocky. So on the right-hand side photo, which was Monday morning, you can see that my legs are starting to lean out a little bit. My body looks a little bit more chiseled. There's a little bit more definition starting to creep in. Well, that is an almost 8.5, 9 pound difference in photos. And to the naked eye, you couldn't really tell that much difference. And the reason why I place significance on this is because now hopefully you will understand that the leaner you get, not only is it harder to make your body lose body fat, but the changes with the losses you make aren't as visually significant as we build it up to be in our mind. Anybody that loses over half a stone would think that loss would be visually obvious. But the leaner you get, the harder it is to see your body changing. And so if we go back to my experience, if we go back to the way my body's conditioned, my last bodybuilding show, I lost 45 pounds in 16 weeks and I was doing 2 hours of cardio a day. So 45 pounds in 16 weeks. To give you perspective, I've lost 8.5 pounds in 12 weeks. So I'm 4 weeks away from the same amount of time that it took me to lose 45 pounds back in 2018, 2019. I was doing cardio 2 hours a day and I was training 7 days a week. And I was eating very little food. Now, the reason why I tell you that is because, sure, I lost 45 pounds and I look great. Looked great. Some might even say, oh, I don't like how that looked. But you have to remember, what I was doing it for was based on looking a certain way. This wasn't an everyday lifestyle decision that I was making because I felt like shit, I was tired, I couldn't sleep, my appetite, my appetite was all over the place, I had headaches, I couldn't walk, I was lethargic, it was horrendous. I had to get up at 6 a.m. every morning and do an hour of cardio, then I'd have my breakfast, I'd wait an hour, I'd go and train for 2 hours, and then I'd do my second cardio session around 7 or 8 p.m. on the bike in the front room. I did that for 16 weeks. And in doing so, lost 45 pounds. Now that's a very short period of time, 16 weeks, to lose 45 pounds. It's a very, very, very short period of time. And the reason why this is so significant is because what I have taught my body to do is condition itself to the highest possible level. My body to burn body fat to the levels where I was at, so around 96, 97 kilos, which is what I'm trying to aim for, 97 kilos this time round. It's been conditioned to get there by being super extreme. Now, if we think about how I'm approaching this now, it is nowhere near as extreme. If we use a ladder, 10 being 2019, what I did, the most extreme, to where I am now in 2023, I'd say that where I am on the ladder now is probably level 3. So I'm at level 3, and what it took me to get to 97 kilos 3 years ago, what I did was level 10. So now you can start to see the disparity between what my body's conditioned to do and what it is I'm currently doing. Now the question is, but that was 3 years ago, Grant. Surely that doesn't make any difference. If I hadn't have taken any time off and I managed to metabolize my body at 97 kilos and condition it to stay at 97 kilos, then yes, it would be a lot easier to stay around 97 kilos. But the problem is, when you do something that extreme, you can't sustain it. So once I come off stage, there was absolutely no way I was ever thinking of sustaining training 7 days a week and doing 2 hours of cardio a day. I got off stage, we went on holiday the next day, I was in Mexico having the best time of my life, right? And I actually think my weight fluctuated in that first 4 days. I think I put on 8 kgs. So I put on over a stone in the first 4 days of eating. But when I talk to you about this weight fluctuation and being aggressive on the way down, if we can't sustain that shift down, we're never going to be able to sustain the shift up. And more often than not, what happens is we deplete our body and we tax our body and we stress our body so much that when we give up and break and crack and can't sustain it anymore and we go back to eating normal food, the weight is even more on the way up. It took me 16 weeks to lose 45 pounds. It took me 4 days to gain 16. So just let that sink in. This is why, if you're not aware and understanding of how to decrease body fat sustainably and consistently in as small as margin as possible, you always, year after year, you end up gaining more body fat. Because all you're doing is teaching your body how to lose fat in a short space of time. And if we bring it back to me, that is what I've taught my body to do. The 12 years, well, I competed for 7 years. So in the 7 years of fat loss phases, bulks, fat loss phases, competition preps, bulks, fat loss phases, competition preps, I have taught my body how to decrease body fat and build muscle. That's why building muscle for me is very easy, and decreasing body fat for me is very hard, because my body has only been conditioned to lose body fat in one way. And that one way is doing 2 hours of cardio and training 7 days a week on very low calories for a very short period. Fortunately for me, because I have the knowledge and the experience and the understanding of what direction I'm trying to go in, and I am not bound by time. So even though this is a 17-week period, this is almost 17 weeks to see if my body is still capable of doing it. And up until the end of last week, my body was showing me that it still is prepared to decrease body fat from moderate cardio and high calories. Now, because I'm a coach and because I understand the patterns and I understand how bodies work and I understand how my body works very well, I know that I'm hovering around that 101 kilo mark. Dropped down to 100, rebounded straight back up, because my body is not happy at anything lower than 101 kilos. So I've managed to shave off 4 kilos, started at 105, I'm down to 101. Now my body is saying to me, if you want me to move anymore, you're gonna have to do what I'm conditioned to do to get lower. So essentially what my body's saying to me is, you're gonna have to do 2 hours of cardio a day, Grant, and train 7 days a week in order for me to lose another 4 kg for you to get to 97 kilos. Now, I'm obviously not prepared to do that, because the objective for me is to get myself back in shape and stay there. I don't need to get any bigger. I don't need to build any more muscle. I just want to be in good shape and feel good. If we go back to the 2 photos and you have a look at the photos, you can see my body is slowly starting to look a bit better. But I'm not happy with how it looks. I want to be a bit leaner, okay? Not to a point where the veins are popping out of my, not that, okay? Just so I can see my abs, so I feel good. But that's gonna take a little bit more work because my body understands what I'm trying to do now. I said maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was seeing the signs. Well, now we're here. We're here now. My body understands exactly what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to do it. So this week I have to make some changes. And this all comes down to what you're prepared to do. So rather than doing anything to chase the image, we have to ask ourselves, right, with the life that I have, with the lifestyle that I have, with the work, with family, with all my commitments, what is it that I'm prepared to do? Because if you're prepared to do something that you can sustain, even on the worst week, even on the worst day, you can still manage to do it. If we shoot too high and what we decide to do does not fit our lifestyle, not for today, for next week, for next month, for next year, eventually you're going to quit because you can't sustain it. So the decisions we have to make, we almost have to think 5 steps ahead. Sure, I want to get there as quick as possible, but can I actually sustain it once I'm there? Perfect example, my weight has stalled at 101. If I want to get to 97 as quick as possible, I know I've got to do 2 hours of cardio a day. If I start 2 hours of cardio a day from today, I will probably be at 97 kilos in 2 weeks. The problem is I'm not prepared to keep doing 2 hours of cardio and training 7 days a week for the next 10 years after that. So if I'm not realistic and honest with myself with what I'm doing and what I'm prepared to sustain, there's no point doing it. And this is why I say to a lot of you, anyone can lose weight quickly. But what happens when you can't do it anymore? Can you sustain it? 99% of the time? No, you can't. And all that eventually happens is you slowly start to make your way back up the scale and back towards where you started. So for me, I have to make some adjustments with my nutrition now. I said at the start, we want to leave nutrition adjustments to the last point we can and try and milk as much of the progress as we can out of the nutrition that we have. Well, we're at start of week 13. We're 13 weeks in, body saying something has to change. I'm not prepared to do 2 hours of cardio every day. I'm doing 3 1-hour walks and I'm doing 1.5 hour walk. Steady pace, no drama. I have the option of doing more days or increasing the duration for the walks that I'm currently doing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to increase 1 more walk to 1.5 hours. So I'll be doing 2 1-hour walks and 2 1.5 hour walks, which when you're walking outside, fresh air, nice weather, it's not a problem. Nutrition wise, in the quarterly feedback, somebody asked, why don't we try different type of diets? Keto, Cambridge, high, why don't we try different diet protocols? And the reason I gave was because your body's not conditioned for it. Your body has to be conditioned and ready to implement something such as a ketogenic diet. A lot of people try to go on keto and struggle because they don't understand how long it takes to get into ketosis, which is the ability of your body to use fat as its primary energy stores. It takes 3, 4, maybe 6 months to get your body into keto. Now, if you have a busy life, hectic life, working, commuting, a lot of intense work, sitting at a desk, working with people, it's very hard to maintain hormonal balance when you have no carbohydrates in your system. Really and truly, to go on these intense diets, you have to have a lifestyle that allows you to do so. Otherwise, it starts to affect every other part of your life. You can't sleep, your interactions with people are very blunt, your mood swings, everything changes because you're reducing the amount of carbohydrates that your body's getting. If you have a lifestyle such as mine, where you try to avoid people as much as possible, and you can hide away and sit in front of a computer on your own, then a ketogenic diet, if your body has been programmed to operate off of a ketogenic diet in the past, and you have a sufficient level of body fat, whereby your body understands what it needs to do, then potentially a ketogenic diet can be implemented. Now, I know, based off my competition preps, that in the last 4 to 5 weeks before my shows, we would switch to a ketogenic diet just for 4 to 5 weeks. And that might sound contradictory because what I said was you don't do something you can't sustain. I know that the ketogenic diet, I can sustain it. It won't be completely ketogenic, so I will have carbs in my diet, but my carbohydrates will be much lower and my fat intake will be much higher versus what I'm doing currently. At the minute, my carbohydrates are quite high, my fats are quite moderate. I'm going to switch that. So I'm going to create more energy coming from my fat and less of my energy coming from my carbs. And I know, based off of 15 years of doing this, that my body will respond within a week of doing that. I don't have to add in ridiculous amounts of cardio, and I don't have to cut my food that much. What I'm doing is essentially offsetting the amount of energy that I'm getting from carbohydrates with fat. So my body's still getting the same amount of food, it's just coming from a different source. What most people do is they cut out a whole food group. And so they're not getting the energy from the food, and they're not getting the nutrition from the food, and they're now in a massive deficit of energy because they've eliminated a whole food group to create a result. There always has to be an offset. So going into week 13, that is the protocol that I'm going to take. We're going to switch my fats and my carbohydrates around, and I'm going to increase one of my cardio sessions by half an hour. Now, I know that if this works and gets me to 97 kilos, I will happily stay at 97 kilos doing what I'm doing. There is not one doubt in my mind that I cannot sustain the changes that I'm making. And this is the most important thing about this week, is that we have to understand the changes we make have to be sustainable. It's what I say to all of you. Nothing changes unless you can sustain it. Unless you get to a point where you can control it, you can maintain it, and you understand what needs to be done, and your body has settled to a point where it understands what to do, you cannot make any changes, because all we teach our body to do is exactly what I've taught mine to do: burn fat at a very high level of output. And this is why a lot of people get caught up in the short-term mind thinking, because no one's thinking about 5 years, 10 years time. Nobody's thinking about that. And when I was in my competition preps, I was never thinking about, well, what's my body going to be like when I'm 36? When I was 28, I wasn't thinking that. When I was 32, I wasn't thinking that. The year before I stopped bodybuilding, I wasn't thinking that. But now at 36, I understand that because of everything that I put my body through, it's conditioned to operate at a certain level. The fortunate thing for me is I have the muscle mass. I've built the body. So my goal is really to just decrease some body fat. I'm strong. I've got enough muscle mass. The last decade of training has built a body that will last the next 40, 50 years. So for that, I don't have anything to worry about. And that's what I'm trying to get all of you to understand, is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to build something that lasts the rest of your life. There is no point going around in circles chasing your tail for the next 30 years. We're trying to do it right once so that you can create something that you can be proud of, that's strong enough, that's fit enough, that's healthy enough, that's lean enough, that's strong enough to last you the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life. And you don't have to worry about it anymore because you've got it under control. So that's the significance of this week. There's going to be a lot of adjustment to make. I'm very assured of that because I've done it in the past and I know it works. And this is what also I'm trying to teach you all. Once we understand what works for you, you know what works. There's no need to keep trying different things. Once we know what works, we just do what works. It's a very simple formula, but we have to learn what works first. So I always say, this is my update on my progress, on my journey for you to have insight into. This is not me telling you go and do what I'm doing, because you haven't done what I've done and your body isn't set up the same way mine is. I would not want any of you to do 2 hours of cardio every day because trust me, it's hell. But that's the significance of this video. So going into this week, I'm very optimistic. Training still feels good, still feel strong in the gym, and we're going to see how this week unfolds. Other than that, I'll see you next week.